Welcome to Razep Africa, the heartbeat of the continent in one show.
But now it's time for the African News Update, and we begin in Nigeria, where the Dangote refinery says it will prioritize domestic production over everything else. The fuel market, in an effort to prevent shortages and cushion the impact of rising global oil prices triggered by the conflict in the Middle East. Officials at the refinery say Nigeria will continue to enjoy fuel supply security provided the facility maintains steady access to locally produced crude oil. The refinery, owned by Africa's richest man, Aliko Dangote, has a production capacity of about 650,000 barrels per day and currently supplies much of Nigeria's fuel needs. However, its management says further price increases cannot be ruled out as the company remains exposed to global oil markets. Still in the spirit of International Women's Day celebration, 4 women prisoners in Sierra Leone have been released from detention through a rehabilitation program that uses football as a tool for social change. The inmates were freed after an intervention by the Football for Reform Initiative, a project aimed at supporting women in correctional facilities and helping them to reintegrate into society. Authorities say the program has secured the release of about 1 out of hundreds of female inmates over the past 5 years, while also providing skills training to help them rebuild their lives after prison. Advocates say many women in detention are jailed for minor offenses and lack access to legal representation, highlighting the need for reforms that prioritize rehabilitation over punishment. Meanwhile, in Ivory Coast, cocoa farmers are facing growing uncertainty after a sharp collapse in global cocoa prices left large quantities of beans sitting unsold in warehouses. In the village of Kaume Kausokro near Bofle, farmers say they are holding receipts instead of cash as payment for cocoa already sold and have been delayed for months. Ivory Coast, the world's largest cocoa producer, had earlier announced a farm gate price of 2,800 francs per kilogram for the main crop. But after global cocoa prices surged to more than $12,000 per metric ton in 2024 before crashing to around $4,000, traders say purchasing the beans at the government set price would lead to losses. As a result, farmers across the region are struggling to finance their next planting season. Elsewhere in Madagascar, President Michael Radinouria has dismissed the country's prime minister and entire cabinet, according to a statement released by the presidency. The decision comes just months after the leader seized power in October following youth-led protests that forced out former President Andry Rajoelina. Officials say a new prime minister will soon be appointed in accordance with constitutional procedures. Though no reason was given for the sweeping dismissal, the move has raised questions about direction of the new administration as it attempts to consolidate power after the political upheaval. In Gabon, military leaders Brice Oligui Nguema has announced that he will run in the country's presidential election scheduled for April 12th. Nguema led the coup that ended more than 5 decades of rule by the Bongo family, when he removed President Ali Bongo from power in August 2023. Nguema had previously pledged to return power to civilians after the transitional period. However, a new electoral code approved earlier this year now allows members of the military to contest elections. The former head of the Presidential Guard says his vision is for Gabon rising from the ashes as he seeks support of voters. Meanwhile, in Guinea, opposition leaders have strongly criticized the president's decision to dissolve 40 political parties, including some of the country's most prominent opposition groups. Authorities say the parties were disbanded for failing to comply with the country's political party regulations. Opposition figures Cellou Dalein Diallo, leader of the Union of Democratic Forces of Guinea, described the move as an attempt by President Mamadi Doumbouya to establish a one-party state. The dissolution comes ahead of legislative elections that are expected to play a key role in the country's transition from military to civilian government. Elsewhere in the Sahel, the United States is reportedly close to reaching an agreement with Mali, which would allow Washington to resume intelligence gathering flights over the country. The move will enable American aircraft and drones to monitor jihadist groups linked to Al-Qaeda that have been expanding their operations across the region. The development follows a decision by Washington to lift sanctions on several senior Malian officials, a step analysts say is aimed at rebuilding relations between the two countries. U.S. officials say the intelligence operations could also help locate an American pilot kidnapped by militants in neighboring Niger and believed to be held in Mali. And that's it for the African News Update today.